Steve Martin is about to turn 80, and he just revealed the most ridiculous anti-aging plan you've ever heard. It involves Ozempic, McDonald's 3 times a day, and a personal battle with time itself. But that's just the beginning. In his latest appearance, the comedy legend didn't hold back, talking banned books, brain fog, and why his writing partner Martin Short might be flirting with ghosts. From bizarre health hacks to Emmy snubs, Steve's still as sharp, weird, and unexpectedly wise as ever. And the craziest part? He might just be hitting his peak now. Steve Martin walks onto the stage like he's done it 1,000 times, because he has. But this time, something feels different. He's not just promoting a book or a song, he's subtly reminding the world that age doesn't define creativity. When Jimmy Kimmel introduces him as turning 80, Steve doesn't flinch. He cracks a joke about being 77, but blames it on dyslexia. Classic Steve, dry, quick, and smarter than it sounds. But even through the laughs, one thing is clear. This isn't a man slowing down. He's writing books, composing music, filming hit shows, and delivering punchlines sharper than most comics half his age. He's not aging quietly, he's turning it into a punchline. Most people avoid talking about getting older. Steve Martin? He leans into it hard. When asked how he feels about aging, he doesn't hesitate. The key, he says, is to be honest with yourself. And then with a straight face, he adds that one day his hair might turn gray. And when it does, he's ready. This is coming from a man whose hair turned white decades ago, but he's not pretending it's all easy. He brings up a quote from writer Martin Amis about looking in a trusted mirror at home and thinking you look great, only to catch a glimpse of yourself in a storefront window and think, what the hell happened? It's funny, sure, but there's truth behind the laugh. Steve knows the mirror lies. The years pile up, and the real trick is learning to laugh first. If you thought Steve Martin was coasting into old age with yoga and green smoothies, think again. With perfect comedic timing, he casually drops his plan for staying fit. Start taking Ozempic, the trendy diabetes drug turned weight loss miracle, and pair it with eating McDonald's 3 times a day for 6 straight months. Then he pauses and says, we'll see who wins. It's absurd, it's reckless, it's hilarious, and somehow it perfectly captures the way Steve Martin sees the world, where even a health crisis becomes a setup for a joke, and the punchline hits right where it hurts. In the truth, he's not mocking the drug or the food. He's mocking our obsession with control, with aging, with image. And at nearly 80, he's got nothing to prove except maybe that fast food and pharmaceuticals can, in fact, be part of a wellness routine, if the routine is making everyone laugh. Aging might dull the body, but Steve Martin's mind still razor sharp, and he's got a system to prove it. He doesn't rely on brain scans or memory games. Instead, he watches his vocabulary. Seriously, he explains that he recently used the word wafer in conversation and was impressed with himself, not because it was funny, but because it had been decades since he'd used that word, and yet it was still there, just waiting in his brain like an old friend. That's how Steve checks for mental sharpness, random words. It's subtle, kind of genius, and definitely very Steve Martin. Most people fear forgetting names or losing their train of thought. Steve, he's out here celebrating snack-based nouns. And it works, because instead of complaining about memory loss, he finds a reason to laugh, even if it's over a wafer. Steve Martin and Martin Short have been inseparable for decades. On stage, on screen, and in real life. So when Steve shows up without Marty, it's noticeable. He jokes that Short couldn't make it because he had to self-deport, then adds that he now understands how moms feel dropping their kids off at daycare. Where did the noise go? But when the conversation turns serious, or at least Steve Martin's serious, he shares Marty's philosophy on aging. Whenever Martin Short feels like a young woman might be flirting with him, he reminds himself that it's basically like him flirting with someone born in 1911. It's ridiculous, and yet kind of profound. That's the magic of their friendship. They make fun of everything, including themselves, but there's always a little wisdom tucked into the punchline. They're both pushing 80, but neither one is ready to stop. And according to Steve, if only Murders in the Building runs long enough, they already know how it ends. They'll be the victims, and the killer will be time. Steve Martin isn't just cracking jokes, he's publishing again. His new book, Steve Martin Writes the Written Word, is a blend of old and new. Essays, reflections, and 2 novellas that dive deep into his signature offbeat storytelling. One of those novellas? Shop Girl, a quiet, emotional piece that somehow ended up on a banned books list in Florida. Steve doesn't rant about censorship. He just smiles and says, nothing sells books like having it banned. And he's not wrong. From The Catcher in the Rye to 1984, banned books tend to find their way into more hands. And Martin knows how to ride that wave with grace and wit. But don't mistake this for a publicity stunt. This is Steve doing what he's always done, blending satire with sincerity, turning absurdity into commentary, and reminding everyone that comedy can still be smart, even when it's hidden in a banned novella. Steve Martin's not just a writer or a comic, he's a banjo player, a serious one, and his latest collaborator, none other than Grammy-winning banjo virtuoso Alison Brown. Their story sounds like a tall tale, two families vacationing on a rough and tumble Caribbean island where the only thing sharper than the coconuts was their shared love for 5-string banjos. Allison, who started playing at age 10, didn't come from a long line of bluegrass legends. She came from a family of lawyers, but she swapped the courtroom for concert halls, eventually performing in iconic venues like the Troubadour and the Palomino Club. And yes, even the parking lot of a Shakey's Pizza. Steve lights up when talking about their partnership. She writes the music, he writes the lyrics, and together they've composed over a dozen songs. It's not just a gimmick, it's a real creative force that blends comedy, craftsmanship, and deep respect for the genre. Because for all the jokes, Steve Martin knows good music, and he's found a kindred spirit who's just as obsessed with string and story. Steve and Allison's latest single, 5 Days Out, 2 Days Back, isn't just a quirky song title. It's a full-blown bluegrass narrative with heart, humor, and twang. And while Steve jokes that the song hit #1 on the bluegrass charts and number 10,227 on the pop charts, the truth is, people are listening. Bluegrass might not dominate the mainstream, but for Steve, that's not the point. The music is personal. It's storytelling. And it's another way for him to stay connected, creative, and just a little bit unexpected. At a time when most entertainers his age are slowing down or stepping out of the spotlight, Steve Martin is still experimenting, still performing, still making stuff. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. And apparently, people love it, even if it's only 10/227. At an age when most people are retired, reminiscing, or quietly fading from the spotlight, Steve Martin is doing the exact opposite. He's writing books that get banned, composing songs with banjo legends, headlining hit TV shows, and cracking jokes about Ozempic and fast food like it's no big deal. But underneath the comedy, there's something else. Purpose. Steve Martin isn't just trying to be funny. He's trying to stay curious, relevant, creative, alive. He's proof that age doesn't mean decline. It just means your stories get weirder, your jokes get sharper, and your filter, gone. Whether he's trolling Jimmy Kimmel, outsmarting award shows, or casually taking over the bluegrass charts, one thing is clear. Steve Martin isn't finished. He's evolving. And if time really is the killer, Steve's still one step ahead, banjo in hand, laughing all the way.